there's one more story that I really want to do with you, Beth, because you have lived abroad and you've lived all over the country as well. And I found this online and I thought it was really interesting. And I thought you'd be a really, really fun person to talk about it with. So here's an essay. We don't know how to warn you any harder. America is dying. I'm going to read a little bit of this and then we're going to talk about it. We survivors of authoritarianism have a message America needs to hear. This is exactly how it's happening. And it's happening here. Right about now, something terrible is happening in America. Society is one tiny step away from the final collapse of democracy at the hands of a true authoritarian and its fanatics. Meanwhile, America's silent majority is still slumbering at the depth and gravity of the threat. I know that strikes many of you as somehow wrong, so let me challenge you. How much experience do you really have with authoritarianism? Any? If you're a quote-unquote real American, you have precisely none. Take it from us survivors and scholars of authoritarianism. This is exactly how it happens. The situation could not be any worse. The odds are now very much against American democracy surviving. Do you think that's accurate?
Okay, well, I would say this. I'm not sure where the slant is in this article. Is it saying, I assume what they're saying is because Trump is in office, that's what I'm hearing from this essay is that their main point is that because Trump is in office, this is happening. Is that right?
So the whole thing is like an 11-minute read, so we're not going to like go through the whole thing. But I think they're saying they're making more of a societal statement. Like they're kind of like putting all the pieces together where Trump combined with the surveillance state that we have right now, combined with the complete militarization to unseen levels. I think they're kind of combining everything in our contemporary moment, and they're saying this is how it happens. I mean, I don't know if they're entertaining the idea that it's just magically going to go away if Trump goes away. I wish that were the case, but I think they're basically saying this is how these things go, and America is dying. And I think to an extent, they're correct.
Yeah, I would actually agree with that. I do think that's correct, but I would have to read the entire essay to see if their analysis of the situation is correct. Because, yeah, overall, I think that's accurate. However, if the essay doesn't go into the systemic problem which led us here, then it has to be nuanced. Because, I mean, if we're gonna compare America, for example, going into fascism and the authoritarian state, and if we looked, for example, at 1930s Germany, we know, looking back, that Germans were economically in the worst point they had ever been in, or in that era. And until we address why Americans are so desperate, you can't simply pin it on Trump being in office and a decline into authoritarianism without looking at our media, which feeds into it. We don't even have a free and fair and open media in this country. Most people are still consuming CNN and MSNBC, and younger people are turning towards independent media, and I think and it's a good trend for sure, but so many folks are listening. Like, we can go back to the CNN story we started at the beginning with, is Russia behind elevating the tensions in America? So it's very hard, I think, for Americans to even know what's accurate, what news is accurate, who to listen to, and which is another sign that you're following into authoritarianism. So yeah, I believe what you read me is true, but I would like to hear what their analysis is of why.
Right. And I didn't my reason for bringing it in wasn't necessarily to just dissect like their particular take on it, but rather to just ask ourselves that question. Like, ask ourselves, like, well, do we think America's dying? The America that we know is dying. And, my theme on it, my take on it is, I would say, yeah, it is, but that doesn't, the one glimmer of hope that I have is that I would say that doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing. We were in many ways driving off a cliff, and now the car broke down. So it's really shitty that the car is broken down, but we're not driving off the cliff as much, and we have a chance to maybe fix the car and drive in a better direction. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I absolutely do. And that is why, I'm trying
to believe in cars.
That's right. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And, I don't really want America to go on in the way it has been. For the past 40 years, we've seen all of these issues that have, accumulated and culminated into this Trump presidency. It's been going on for so long. And I think to use your analogy, I think it's time to take out the engine and, put on some solar panels, put in an electric engine, get rid of that old clunker, and just let's start over, and you're right. I'm actually trying to find ways to stay positive right now. And I think a lot of that is going to come from, as hard as it is, trying to keep educating our fellow citizens, keep talking to people across all political spectrums. And there's going to be a lot of people who are too far gone and people you can't reach, but there's strength in numbers. And I think, there are so many people that are genuinely just confused and don't have the information. Do you know what I mean?
Well, yeah, because where I get my optimism is, first of all, in communities. We can all do what we can to take back our communities. That's why I'm just saying, look, if we all get involved in our backyard, we form alliances, we form, kind of strategies to kind of take back our communities, to kind of see the types of policies we want in our own backyards. We can do Green New Deals one city at a time if we freaking have to. And at the end of the day, people are going to bicker through November about, what the lesser evil is and this and that. In my opinion, it's way more constructive to instead focus on, well, we have an inevitable evil coming. We're not going to have an ally in the White House no matter what. So let's just focus on how to combat that and how to build for a better tomorrow and what we can do in the meantime, instead of just focusing on the fact that, well, we're not going to have an ally in the White House no matter what. Make whatever moral judgment call you're going to make. That's your choice. But to me, it's like, well, let's start focusing on our backyard, because if we all do something in our backyard, we'll look at a different country really, really quickly. They never tell you that, though. They never tell you that the most powerful vote you have is in your neighborhood. That's the most powerful vote you have. I'm not going to say corruption doesn't happen in local politics. Of course it does. But it's way more transparent, comparatively speaking. They don't tell you that the power that you have is when you show up at a protest, when you strike. That's the power that you have. They don't tell you any of those things because they don't really want you to know that.
Well, I think our whole system is set up for people to be politically apathetic. So you're right. They don't tell us that. And, look at the voter turnout in America. It's working, suppressing the vote and making people do feel powerless to change anything. And that's by design. And yeah, all politics, I don't like to go to the generalization that all politics is local, because I think that oversimplifies it. But yeah, you have to get involved. You have to get involved locally. And I remember the bumper sticker, think locally, or no, act locally, think globally. And I think that still rings true. That's really, yeah, you have to have a strong support network, both locally and, through social media. Now we do, for all of its ills, one wonderful thing is that it has allowed so many people to connect and to give each other support and, share ideas, what's worked in their local communities, what they're doing, so there are all of these tools that didn't even exist, 15, 20 years ago for us.
Absolutely.
Get your news on with Ron. Don't you want to know what's going on? We're getting our news on today. Get your news news on with Ron. Don't you wanna know what's going on? We're getting our news on today. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You can tweet me an article at Ron Placone. We'll go through it together and